Mortal Kombat! Alright, so hi. Welcome to End Credit Reviews on episode after the credits on End Credit Reviews. It's just me, Tyler, this time from End Credit Reviews, and this is my review on the 2021 reboot of Mortal Kombat. Now, before I begin to my review on the movie, I should give a little bit of backstory and history about the franchise. So, back in the fall of 1992, the Mortal Kombat video game was first released to the public, and it was very popular at its time, and what really drew people to it was the very realistic graphics, the very addictive gameplay, but of course, there was a lot of graphic violence in the game itself, which seems pretty tame today by today's standards. But anyway, the Mortal Kombat franchise has remained relevant for nearly 30 years, and it has various spin-offs, whether it be TV shows or comic books, and of course movies. So the 1995 movie, I think, is a fairly entertaining movie. It definitely has its moments. I really love the soundtrack, and for Mortal Kombat Annihilation, it's bad, but it's hilarious. It's a guilty pleasure movie of mine. I just get a good laugh out of it from time to time. And then we had the Mortal Kombat movie that came out back with Scorpion's Revenge a year ago that I already reviewed, and I thought that was really good. That was better than I thought it was going to be. And the first memory I've had playing Mortal Kombat was back when I was a very little kid. I remember playing the video game on Nintendo 64. It was Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and I had a lot of fun with it. And my favorite video game in the Mortal Kombat franchise would easily have to be the 2011 reboot that I recently replayed that game, and it really does hold up. So anyway, so now let's talk about this movie here. So they originally were going to reboot the movie, I believe, back in the 2000s. They were going to do filming locations around Louisiana during the mid-2000s, but then Hurricane Katrina happened, and then I believe in the 2010s there was the Mortal Kombat Legacies TV show that they tried to spark interest in the franchise yet again. So then around 2015, 16, I forget exactly which year it was, but James Wan, the guy who's been involved with many horror movies, such as the Conjuring franchise and the Insidious franchise and various other ones, decided, I'm going to produce this movie. And he got this guy named Simon Wicquad, or I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name there, to direct this movie. And I was concerned about it because I looked at his IMDb, and this is his directorial film debut. I mean, he had like a short film they made many years ago, but this is his first movie, and I feel like that's not a good idea to do that sort of thing. Sure, I've criticized other movie directors for just getting one small movie and then making a big movie, but this one, I guess, was sort of a leap of faith here. So this is the first Mortal Kombat movie to be rated R, and this reboot, we have our main character, played by Louis Tan, who plays the character of Cole Young, who has a strange dragon marking on him, and it turns out that's an invitation to be in a tournament called Mortal Kombat. Now, the movie itself was released both in theaters and HBO Max on the same day, and personally, I'm happy that I decided to watch on HBO Max instead because I felt like it was an enjoyable movie, but I wouldn't say it was really like a good movie necessarily. It's enjoyable, but it definitely has its problems, so I think a lot of people would agree upon that the biggest issue with the movie is the main character. Now, I'm not saying that Louis Tan's a bad actor, he's definitely not. It's not his fault that the character is just so bland and just so meh. I mean, according to one of the writers in this movie, I think it was Greg Russo, admitted that the reason why this character was in the movie, it was because it was the studio who wanted a character that mainstream audiences could connect to that wasn't necessarily people who were familiar with the video games. So I felt like that was not a good idea. And if they're going to do that sort of thing, they should have had Johnny Cage do that instead. Which, by the way, kind of a spoiler here, but they do hint at Johnny Cage does exist in this universe, but it's towards the end. And speaking of, there's a few other Easter eggs in this that I noticed, such as an illustration of Nightwolf and also a statue of Kublai Khan. He was a newer character in the franchise, as well as Taven and his parents from the Mortal Kombat Armageddon video game that's featured in Raiden's Temple, and even Katana's fan blade, which, speaking of, I think one issue I do have with this movie is the fact that we have Melina in the movie, but there's no Katana, which is kind of weird. I understand why they have her in this one, but they don't have Katana in there, which is just a weird way, like absence-wise, why they didn't have that character featured in there. I just found that pretty odd. So of all the new cast of characters in this movie by different actors, the one that I enjoyed the most was, of course, Josh Lawson as Kano, and a lot of people would agree because he has so many funny one-liners that are just, pretty hilarious. My favorite was when he's really, bantering with everyone at the dinner table, and his comments about Kung Lao in his hat. I thought that was hilarious. But also, I know this is kind of spoiler stuff, so I'm just gonna full disclosure, spoiler stuff from here on out. So in the movie, I know it's in the first scene of the movie that they show online on YouTube, but one thing I don't get is the fact that they made Sub-Zero more of a villainous character, who this time is played by Joe Taslim, I think is how you pronounce his name. And we also have Scorpion in this movie, who's played this time by Harushiko. I really butchered his name worse than any character does in a Mortal Kombat fatality. I apologize for that. But yeah, I liked the casting of this one, and I did like how they acknowledged that Sub-Zero is Chinese and Scorpion is Japanese. But the thing is that I don't get why they had to make Sub-Zero a villainous character, because in the video game, it was Quan Chi, who was in disguise, who killed who killed Scorpion's family, so thus he could trick Scorpion to become his servant. But I guess for some reason they just completely omitted that out for some reason, just to make Scorpion more of a heroic character and then Sub-Zero more of a villainous guy. Speaking of, I don't get why Scorpion waited hundreds of years in the Netherrealm just to fight Sub-Zero. That just didn't make any sense to me. Like, I know they had to take place in a really ancient Japan setting to where that sort of background happened, but I'm just wondering, is America the only first world country in the entire planet where there's certain groups of people that live purposely in the past from like hundreds of years ago? Are there any kind of Amish-like people that live in other first world countries, in Japan or other first world countries? Just please comment in the comment section below and let me know if that's a thing or not. But yeah, I mean, another issue that I had with this movie too that kind of took me out of it was, well, the big one that I didn't like is, again, a spoiler here, is that there's not really a Mortal Kombat tournament. It's just Shang Tsung, who is ordering his henchmen to kill these guys before the tournament begins. So I'm like, okay, we're going to get to the tournament? And no, there's no tournament. And I thought, like, that was disappointing. And I know they say, like, we're going to make our own tournament, but it feels very makeshift and very on the spot and that sort of deal. And I mean, it was cool to see, let's say, the pits scene from the Mortal Kombat games, but sadly, when one of the characters gets killed, he doesn't get, thrown into the pit with the spikes. He just gets killed. I'm like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. And again, I know this is kind of my own personal bias, but I strongly prefer the actor who played Shang Tsung in the 1995 version opposed to the actor who played him in this one. The actor that they got to play Shang Tsung in this movie, played by Chin Han, I felt like he was just kind of generic. Does he even shapeshift in this movie? I honestly don't remember. And I just didn't find him really that intimidating. He didn't really have the same screen presence as the one from the 1995 movie, which I know doesn't have that good of dialogue and is kind of a cheesy movie, but the actor who played Shang Tsung in that movie was a much better choice. Now, I know it's not a nitpick here at all. It's just bringing up of a character we have in this one, which is, of course, Cabal, who's played by Daniel Nelson in the movie. And in this one, he talks to Kano about, like, hey, man, you should team up with us. You can build your own casino. And this reminded me of two things for various reasons. So I got bad flashbacks to the third Mummy movie where Jonathan was looking at Shangri-La and he's like, oh, I could live here. Oh, I could build a casino here or something like that. But the big major thing, I know it's really seems like a big stretch here, but Cabal tells Kano, like, you can build your own casino here. There's this one Beastie Boys song, I think it's called Make Some Noise. It was from an album they made about a decade ago. And I think kind of lyrics goes like, talk to Kano in the casino or something like that. But I just vaguely remember that song, and I just remembered that off the top of my head when I saw it there. But yeah, I mean, and also on top of that, I felt like Goro didn't have enough screen time in the movie. I felt like when they introduced him, it was a little bit underwhelming, and he got killed off too soon. I'm like, this is supposed to be like a big, powerful character, someone who's very iconic from the games and that. And even the 1995 movie did a better job of using his screen time and kind of building up the hype to this guy. But this one, they kind of just show him there, and yeah, I know the design of Goro does look more video game accurate than he does in the 1995 movie because his skin is definitely more correct compared to the 1995 one. He moves a lot quicker too, he's bigger in muscle mass. But again, I felt like the 1985 movie did a better job with the screen time. So I know I sound like I'm just complaining about this movie, but it's thoroughly entertaining. It really does truly capture the violent nature of the video games, which I really wish that the previous ones did, at least in live action. And again, it's very nice to see that they're trying their hardest to really try to capture the violent, essence of the video game franchise, and various other iconic moments, which I really did appreciate. And it's a very enjoyable movie in that regard. So as for Mortal Kombat 2021, I will say, yeah, it's better than the 1990s movies on average, but I strongly prefer Scorpion's Revenge, the animated movie that came out just a year ago, and I personally believe that the best Mortal Kombat story is from the 2011 video game. It definitely has its moments. It's a fun time to watch on HBO Max, but I wouldn't recommend going to see this on the big screen in theaters. I would say if Godzilla vs. Kong is still playing, just go see that one instead. So as for Mortal Kombat 2021, I would give it about 2.5 stars out of 4. So anyway, this is Tyler from Anchor Reviews. I hope you enjoyed this episode after the credits on Anchor Reviews, and I hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe.